The stars shimmered like cold diamonds as the diplomatic cruiser Veritas approached the orbital diplomatic station Halion. The station loomed ahead, a massive metallic ring suspended in the quiet darkness of space. It spun slowly, casting long shadows over its surface, surrounded by ships from dozens of alien worlds. Each vessel was marked with strange symbols, glowing hulls, and unusual shapes, testaments to the diversity of the Galactic Union. Inside the human vessel, Captain William Carter stood at the front viewport. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that had seen too much war, Carter studied the station in silence. He was not easily impressed, and Halion scale didn't intimidate him. He had stood in the ruins of Earth's defense grid, had fought among the wreckage of cities and lives. What mattered now wasn't how big the station was, it was what happened inside it. "Final approach, Captain," said Lieutenant Adair Malik, his communications officer. Carter gave a small nod. "Let them know we're ready." As they docked, Carter turned to the others in the delegation. For men and women from Earth's diplomatic corps, trained in negotiation, linguistics, and political strategy. They were dressed in plain gray uniforms, clean, but unadorned. No medals, no weapons, just calm purpose. "This isn't a battlefield," Carter said to them. "But it's not a neutral ground either. We are not among friends. Remember that." The docking clamps locked with a hiss, and the hatch opened. A rush of sterile air greeted them as they stepped onto Halion. The corridors were wide, metallic, and cold. Alien guards, with pale armor and unreadable eyes, flanked the entry. No greetings. No gestures of welcome. A protocol droid guided them through long halls. On the way, they passed diplomats from other species, some tall and insect-like, others floating in containment fields, glowing with bioluminescent pulses. Most of them stared as the humans walked past. A few whispered in their native tongues. Carter didn't need a translator to know they weren't kind words. They were led to their quarters, clean, efficient, and impersonal. Carter stood by the window, watching the ships float outside the station. His reflection stared back at him, tired but resolute. Later that day, they were summoned to the main chamber. The council hall was massive, like a cathedral built from light and metal. The seats were arranged in tiers, each assigned to a different species. At the center, raised above the others, was the high seat of the Chancellor. High Chancellor Zelder sat motionless. His skin was a dull silver, his eyes black and without emotion. When he finally spoke, his voice echoed in the chamber, calm, precise, and cold. "Representatives of Earth, you are late to join the galaxy. This council will offer you guidance. You will listen. You will accept. Or you will be alone." There was no welcome. No acknowledgement of Earth's survival after the war. No sign of goodwill. Carter's expression did not change. He stood still, hands clasped behind his back. "We came for peace," he said, "not to be told our place." Zelder gave a small tilt of the head, something between curiosity and contempt. "Peace has its price." Carter didn't reply. He didn't need to. The message was clear. Earth had been invited, but not as an equal. The talks hadn't even started, and the council had already shown their hand. As the meeting ended, the human delegation walked out in silence. The corridors felt colder now, as if the station itself had passed judgment. Back in their quarters, Carter sat alone for a while, staring out at the stars. He had expected arrogance. He had expected resistance. But not this. "They don't want peace," he murmured to himself. "They want obedience." Outside the window, a human ship slowly passed by, small compared to the alien vessels, but built strong. Carter watched it until it vanished behind the curve of the station. The talks would begin tomorrow, and Earth would not kneel. The next day, the council chamber felt colder. The air was still, as if waiting to witness something important. Captain William Carter walked through the long corridor leading to the chamber, his boots echoing softly against the metallic floor. His team followed in silence. Their expressions were calm, but their eyes showed unease. They all felt it. Something wasn't right. Inside, the chamber was already full. The alien delegates sat in their elevated seats, their forms towering or floating or coiled, depending on the species. Each wore robes, armor, or light auras that signified rank and culture. At the center, as always, sat High Chancellor Zeldar, unmoving, his silver skin reflecting the chamber lights. "Representatives of Earth," Zeldar's voice rang out. "This council now opens the first formal session with your species. What follows will define your place among the stars." Carter stepped forward. "We are ready to listen, Chancellor, and to speak." A long pause followed. Then a side panel in the floor opened, and a thin data pad rose up from the central podium. It hovered before Carter, glowing softly. "The draft treaty," said Zeldar. "Reviewed and agreed upon by the Council. Acceptance will mark your entry into the Galactic Union." Carter stepped closer and began reading. His face remained steady, but his heart began to tighten with every line. No human ships would be allowed beyond Earth's solar system without Council permission. No military vessels could be built larger than a set limit. Earth would hold no vote in Council decisions for the first 50 years. Human representatives would be subject to oversight by a Council-appointed monitor. All technology sharing would be one way. Earth would receive limited access, but must surrender its own research for review. It was not a treaty. It was a leash. Carter looked up. "This is your offer?" Zeldar didn't blink. "It ensures safety. For you. And for the galaxy." "For whom?" Carter asked calmly. "Because from where I stand, it looks like a declaration of control." A ripple of sound moved through the chamber. Some delegates murmured. Others remained still. Another council member, a serpent-like being named Vrankel, uncoiled itself and hissed, "Your kind has brought war wherever it steps. You are unpredictable, emotional, dangerous." Carter replied without raising his voice. "And yet we're the ones asking for peace." Zeldar folded his long hands together. "Emotion is the root of chaos. The Council offers structure, discipline. If you accept, you gain protection and knowledge." Carter studied the Chancellor. "And if we decline? Then Earth will remain isolated. Your people will face the galaxy alone." Silence followed. Carter didn't speak right away. He looked around the chamber, at the eyes watching him, judging him. Some were cold, others curious. A few looked away, uncomfortable. He took a breath. "We survived without your protection. We built our future from ash. If you want peace, we welcome it. But we will not trade freedom for favor." One delegate leaned toward another and whispered in a language the translator didn't catch. They laughed quietly. Carter caught the gesture but ignored it. He stepped back and handed the pad to Malik. "We'll review the terms. But be clear, Chancellor, this is not respect. This is submission disguised as diplomacy." Zeldar's voice grew sharper. "Careful, human. This council does not respond well to defiance." Carter met his eyes without fear. "Neither do we." The meeting ended shortly after. The council dismissed them with cold formality. No handshakes. No thanks. As the humans left the chamber, the weight of the insult pressed heavier than gravity. Back in their quarters, Malik set the data pad down with a hard click. "They don't want a treaty. They want to keep us on a leash." Carter sat down, his hands folded. He looked tired, but his voice was steady. "They're afraid of us. So they pretend they're above us." "And what do we do?" someone asked. "We show them what real dignity looks like," Carter said. "We don't beg. We don't bend. We write our own terms. One that shows them we are not what they think." He looked around at his team. "We didn't come here to be ruled. We came here to be respected." The soft hum of the station filled the quiet as Captain William Carter sat alone in the human delegation's meeting room. Outside the wide observation window, space stretched endlessly. Stars blinked in the distance. Halion Station spun slowly, its inner lights casting faint reflections across the polished floor. Carter stared at the data pad still glowing on the table before him. The treaty remained open, lines of text sharp and cold. Words like restricted, monitored, limited repeated again and again. It was not a partnership. It was a cage. Footsteps approached behind him. Lieutenant Malik entered quietly, holding a fresh pot of tea. She set it down without speaking. Carter gave her a brief nod of thanks. Moments later, the rest of the delegation joined, 5 in total, each carrying the weight of Earth's hopes on their shoulders. They took their seats, eyes fixed on Carter. He didn't waste time. "You've all read it," he said. "You know what it is." Ambassador Reyes, the oldest among them, adjusted his glasses and said, "It's not a treaty. It's a surrender. They want to box us in. Make sure we never grow strong enough to challenge them." Malik frowned. "Some of us think we should accept, for now. We've just come out of a war. Earth's still rebuilding. Isn't some peace better than another war?" Carter met her eyes, calm but firm. "Peace built on fear isn't peace. It's silence before collapse." Another delegate, Ambassador Chen, leaned forward. "They're afraid of us. That much is clear. We fought them to a standstill, despite being outnumbered and outgunned. They never forgot that." Reyes added, "But if we walk away, they'll twist the story. Say we refused unity. That we rejected peace." Carter stood and walked to the window, watching the glow of alien ships moving past the station. His voice was quiet, but it carried strength. "Let them twist the story. History will correct it. What matters is that we don't bend. We show them dignity, not submission. He turned back to the table. We're not refusing peace. We're refusing chains. Silence settled in the room. No one argued. They all knew he was right. The council had no intention of treating Earth as an equal. They wanted a docile world, a new member who would obey without question. Carter picked up the data pad and placed it flat on the table. We rewrite it. Our own version. Fair terms. Equal standing. Shared knowledge. No restrictions on movement or defense. One vote. Same as any other species. We offer it once. And if they reject it? Malik asked. Then we walk away, Carter said. There was no bravado in his tone. No anger. Just simple resolve. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. Over the next few hours, the team worked together, drafting a new treaty line by line. Clear, fair, and balanced. No hidden conditions. No fear. Carter oversaw every section, rewriting legal terms in plain language. If they truly want peace, he said, they'll sign this. If not, then their intentions were never real. When they finished, Malik uploaded the new draft into the Council's communication channel with a short message. Revised treaty attached. Earth seeks peace, not submission. We await your response. The message was formal, but it said everything. That night, Carter stood alone in his quarters. He looked again at the stars. So distant. So quiet. He thought about Earth, its blue oceans, its cracked cities, its people working to rebuild. He thought about the soldiers who didn't make it home. The children growing up under broken skies. The engineers who turned scraps into starships. The farmers who planted food in ash. They didn't survive all that to live on their knees. He turned off the lights and let the stars fill the room. Tomorrow would bring their answer. The council chamber was silent when the humans entered. The air felt heavier than before, as if the walls themselves sensed what was coming. Captain William Carter walked at the front, his expression calm, his back straight. The human delegation followed, silent but steady. Across the vast chamber, alien delegates watched from their high seats. Some leaned forward with curiosity. Others stared with cold indifference. The revised treaty had been sent nearly 12 hours ago. The council had called this meeting without comment or delay. That alone said everything. High Chancellor Zeldar sat in the central chair, hands folded, faces unreadable as ever. His dark eyes locked onto Carter as he approached the podium. Captain Carter, Zeldar began, his voice flat. We received your proposal. It was unexpected. Carter met his gaze. It was honest. Equal. That's what peace requires. Another voice cut in, Vrankel, the snake-like delegate with gleaming scales. Your version of peace places you beside species that have ruled the stars for centuries. You presume too much, human. Carter didn't flinch. We presume fairness. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some delegates whispered translations. Others glanced at Zeldar, waiting to see how far this would go. Zeldar leaned forward slightly. Your kind speaks boldly, but lacks the wisdom of restraint. This council was built on order. You demand parity without understanding our history. Carter stepped closer to the center of the chamber. We understand your history. We read your records. We saw how you treated newcomers, species brought and under control, stripped of freedom until they proved themselves. He paused. You mistake our patience for weakness. That's your second mistake. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Delegates shifted. Some bristled. Others watched with growing interest. Zeldar's voice grew sharper. Then let us be clear, Captain Carter. Your treaty is rejected. Earth will receive limited travel rights, no military expansion, no council vote, and will operate under oversight for your own safety and the galaxy's. Carter said nothing for a long moment. He looked down at the glowing circle beneath his feet, the designated speaking area. Then he slowly stepped off it. He turned toward his team, gave them a nod, and faced the council one last time. Then let us be clear, he said. His voice filled the room, steady and certain. Earth will not be part of an alliance built on fear and arrogance. We came with open hands. You answered with chains. Zeldar stood. You dare walk away from the council? Carter stared up at him. We don't walk away from peace. We walk away from submission. If this is your idea of unity, then you've already failed. He turned to leave. But before he reached the chamber exit, he paused and looked back once more. One day, you'll see what you lost here. And you'll understand that respect is not given to the loudest voice or the oldest empire. It's earned. And we will earn it. On our own terms. He left the chamber in silence. No one followed. No one stopped him. The council sat frozen. A few delegates looked around, uncomfortable. Others whispered behind closed translators. No species had ever withdrawn from talks like this. No envoy had dared to defy the High Chancellor so openly. Carter hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't made threats. He had simply said no and meant it. Back in their quarters, the human delegation prepared for departure. Their faces were unreadable. Some were tense. Others relieved. Malik approached Carter. "We really just walked away." Carter nodded. "We stood up." She handed him a message. "The council just sent a formal statement. Your withdrawal has been logged. The council considers the matter closed." He folded the message without reading further. "We're not done," he said quietly. "They just don't know it yet." Outside the window, Earth's delegation ship began pre-launch checks. The stars beyond the glass looked brighter now, sharper, as if something had shifted in the silence between galaxies. They had come seeking peace. They had found pride, fear, and control. So they walked away, with heads held high. The council chamber, once a place of proud speeches and carefully measured words, was now filled with silence. Captain William Carter and the human delegation were gone. The humans had walked out not in anger, but in quiet defiance. The doors had closed behind them, leaving the council in a stillness that felt heavier than any argument. High Chancellor Zelda remained seated, unmoving. His long fingers tapped once on the armrest of his chair. Around him, other delegates began shifting in their seats, exchanging glances. No one dared speak first. Finally, Counselor Arvian, a tall, crystalline being whose body shimmered with soft light, broke the silence. "They did not threaten us. They did not protest. They simply left." "It was not a negotiation," muttered Vrankel, his coiled form tightening. "It was a challenge. Humans are proud, too proud. Their behavior proves they are not ready." Another voice spoke from a shadowed seat on the upper tier. Counselor Tommel, one of the elder species, known for his slow but thoughtful speech, leaned forward. "Or perhaps we are not ready." Heads turned. "What do you mean?" snapped Vrankel. Tommel's eyes glowed dimly. "We judged them before they sat at the table. We treated them like a threat before we heard their terms. And when they offered fairness, we answered with control." Zeldar's voice remained calm. "They lack discipline. Emotion drives them. Without limits, they are dangerous." Tommel looked directly at the Chancellor. "And yet they walked away instead of fighting. That, Chancellor, is discipline." For a moment, no one replied. Counselor Giler, a feathered being from the Iovari race, spoke next. Her voice was soft but sharp. "When was the last time a species rejected our terms and still left with dignity? They didn't shout. They didn't insult. They just told us the truth and left." "They should have accepted their place," Zeldar said, though his voice now lacked its earlier certainty. "Perhaps we gave them no place to accept," said Arvian. A deep silence followed again. This one felt different, no longer prideful, but heavy with doubt. It settled across the chamber like a slow fog. The council had always operated with order. It had guided dozens of civilizations into peaceful cooperation. But today, a new species had shown them something they didn't expect: self-respect without arrogance, resolve without war. Vrankel hissed in frustration. "They will regret this. No one survives alone." Tommel answered gently, "I think they already have. That's what frightens us, isn't it?" Above them, the central view screen flickered on. A quiet image appeared, the human vessel, Veritas, undocking from Halion. No words. No weapons. Just a ship slowly drifting away into the starry void. Zelda watched it in silence. For the first time, his face showed something beyond cold calculation. Not fear. Not anger. But something closer to unease. "They've made their choice," he said finally. "And so have we," replied Giler. "Let us hope history is kinder to them than we were." As the image of the human ship disappeared into space, the chamber remained still. In that silence, something shifted, not just in the minds of the delegates, but in the future they had just rewritten without realizing it. The humans were gone, but their presence had never been louder. The docking bay hummed with quiet activity as the human vessel Veritas prepared for launch. Lights blinked along the walls, casting a pale glow over the smooth metal floors. Outside, the stars shimmered beyond the transparent bay windows, silent observers of what had just unfolded. Captain William Carter stood near the boarding ramp, reviewing the final departure codes. Around him, crew members moved with quiet efficiency. No one spoke unless necessary. There were no guards, no council escorts, no farewells. The silence from the Galactic Council had followed them all the way to the launch bay. Malik approached with her data pad. "Pre-flight checks complete. We're cleared for undocking." Carter nodded. "Good. Let's leave before they change their minds." Malik hesitated for a second. Still no message from the council. Nothing at all. They've said all they needed to, Carter replied. And so have we. He stepped onto the ramp and entered the ship. Inside, the corridors were narrow and functional, built for purpose, not comfort. But to Carter, this place felt more honest than anything in the Grand Council chambers. Here, he knew every bolt, every system. Here, there were no hidden meanings or masked insults. Just people doing their jobs, working together. He passed through the bridge doors and sat in the command chair. The crew was already in position, pilots, engineers, communications officers. Every one of them had stayed quiet during the last days of negotiations, watching and waiting. But now, with their course set, there was a sense of quiet pride in the room. Begin launch sequence, Carter ordered. The docking clamps released with a low hiss. The Veritas slowly pulled away from the station, turning its nose toward open space. Through the main viewport, Halion Station grew smaller. Malik stood behind Carter, watching the stars. Do you think they'll come after us? Try to stop us? Carter shook his head. No. That would prove us right. And they're not ready to admit they were wrong. Outside, ships from other species floated nearby, their strange shapes and glowing engines watching the human vessel. None moved. None blocked the path. But Carter noticed something strange. One ship, a small scout vessel from the Iovari race, sent a transmission, not in words, just an old Earth symbol. A raised hand. A peaceful gesture. Malik looked at the screen and smiled faintly. At least someone was listening. Carter gave a slow nod. Some of them will remember. Maybe not today. Maybe not soon. But they'll remember. As the Veritas passed the outer ring of the station, Earth's blue signal beacon blinked gently on the console. Their home was still far away, but the connection was strong. Carter looked at it for a long moment. Set course for Sol, he said. The pilot engaged the engines. The stars stretched into long lines, and the ship jumped forward into faster-than-light travel. Carter sat back in his chair, hands folded, eyes focused ahead. They had not signed the treaty. They had not won favor with the council. But they had something more important, self-respect. And that was something no council could give or take away. Behind them, Halion Station faded into silence. Ahead of them, the future waited, uncertain, but theirs to shape. The council chamber remained quiet long after the human ship Veritas had vanished into the stars. No one spoke. The grand hall, usually filled with voices debating policy, now echoed with silence. For the first time in generations, a delegation had walked away, not in defeat, but with dignity. High Chancellor Zelder sat motionless at the center of the hall. His silver skin, once shining with authority, looked dim under the chamber lights. He watched the empty speakers circle where Captain William Carter had stood just hours ago. The human's final words still echoed in his mind. We don't walk away from peace. We walk away from submission. The words had not come with threats. There had been no shouting, no drama, just truth, quiet and sharp as a blade. Counselor Tommel was the first to break the silence. His voice was deep and steady. We misjudged them. Other delegates slowly turned their heads toward him. They came offering peace, not loyalty, and we demanded loyalty before they could speak. Vrankel shifted uneasily in his seat. They were arrogant, refusing the wisdom of this council. Tommel looked at him calmly. Was it arrogance or self-respect? Counselor Giler fluttered her wings lightly. I watched them. Watched Carter. He never raised his voice. He never looked away. He stood here, surrounded by species older and more powerful than his own, and still he stood as an equal. That is not the behavior of a savage. That is the behavior of a leader. Several council members nodded slowly. For the first time, the weight of what had happened began to settle. Zelder finally spoke. We have ruled this galaxy for centuries. We have seen empires rise and fall. But today we saw something rare, a people willing to leave behind power, recognition, and protection, rather than surrender their pride. Arvian, the crystalline delegate, added, and they did it without violence, without threats. Their strength was in their silence. More murmurs followed. Delegates whispered among themselves. Old rivalries faded. The room felt united, not in policy, but in reflection. They had all seen it. The moment Earth drew the line. The moment the galaxy changed. Zelda looked at the central view screen. It displayed a still image of the Veritas, already beyond sensor range, on its way back to Earth. We were wrong, he said at last. We believed strength came from power, from control. But today we saw another kind of strength. The kind we do not yet understand. Counselor Giler stepped forward slightly. Then perhaps it's time we learn. Before we lose more like them. A long silence followed. But this time, it was not the silence of fear or pride. It was the silence of change. Something old had cracked. Something new was waiting. High above, in the quiet stars, the human vessel traveled home. No escorts. No applause. Just a trail of light through dark space. And behind them, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat humbled, not by war, but by the quiet courage of a few who chose to walk away rather than kneel. In that moment, the Galactic Council began to change. Slowly, quietly, but truly, because they finally understood what they had lost, and what it meant to earn respect.